12 Sinister Texas Tales, exposed horrors that are too terrifying to watch alone. Emily stood frozen, her heart thudding painfully against her ribs. The flickering streetlights cast long shadows across her porch, the unsettling ambience thick as fog, teasing her imagination. Just 4 months ago, her life had a semblance of normalcy, but with her husband's mysterious disappearance, the walls of their once vibrant home felt like they were closing in. Now, here she was, staring at the grotesque sight before her, dismembered dolls, arranged in a circle, their plastic faces twisted into frozen screams. Each painted eye was wide with horror, as if they knew a terrible secret. What kind of twisted mind would do this? The air felt charged, crackling with an unseen force, and a chill ran up her spine. Emily fought back the urge to scream, suppressing the panic gnawing at her insides. She took a cautious step forward, trying to convince herself it was just a sick joke, but the dolls seemed to whisper her name. She quickly turned and shut the door, her hands trembling as she latched it tight. "Mommy, what's wrong?" Her oldest child, Jacob, asked, peering up at her with his soft, trusting eyes. His innocence pierced through the darkness, reminding her of the protector she needed to be. She forced a smile, but it felt like a mask. "Nothing, honey. Just a little surprise on the porch," she replied, shoving her worries aside. The shadows outside danced, reminiscent of something sinister lurking just beyond her sight. The closer-knit community of Willow Creek seemed to thrum with tension lately. The whispers of paranoia had snowballed into fears, rumors swirling about a predator stalking the families. They all heard tales of the asylum, abandoned and hidden, where terrible things had occurred decades ago. But tonight, those stories felt too real. Her heart raced as she remembered the tremors in the voices of her neighbors as they huddled in groups, casting glances over their shoulders. Gathering her courage, Emily reached out to the local sheriff. A stout man with a dismissive attitude and a badge that gleamed under the flickering lights. "Just a prank. Kids are bored," he shrugged, his eyes flitting nervously away from hers. She could feel the corruption saturate his words, thick and sickly, like tree sap. "You should be grateful it's just dolls and not something worse," he said, cutting her off with a wave of his hand. But his flippant dismissal left her feeling hollow and exposed. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. Each night after the dolls, Emily lay awake, the whispers of her neighbors echoing through her mind like a haunting melody, a chorus of mistrust that surrounded her. Thoughts spiraled, paranoia overwhelming reason as she pieced together fragments of conversations that hinted at connections between her husband's disappearance and the dark stewardship of the community. Then she found the note torn and crumpled, stashed among the flowers on the porch, a confession linking her husband's fate to the folklore of the collector, a figure that snatched children from their homes at dusk. Fear squeezed at her throat, and she felt a tight knot coil in her stomach as she realized the danger wasn't just from shadowy figures. It was here, enveloped in smiles that hid malevolence, eyes that watched from behind curtains. As the moon rose high, casting ghostly beams, Emily stared out into the night, her heart raced in anticipation of what else might emerge from the darkness. She realized with aching clarity, someone was lurking, hidden among the facade of their neighborhood. Who or what was truly hunting her family in these treacherous shadows? The answer lingered just out of reach, drawing her closer into a world of horror where safety was only an illusion. The clock ticked like a metronome in the stillness of the house, echoing the weight of Emily's fear as she tried to find sleep, or a semblance of it. But the shadows cast by the waning moon danced in unsettling patterns, and each creak of the floorboard sounded like footsteps. "Mommy?" Jacob's small voice broke the silence, thin and quivering. He was standing at her door, holding a tattered teddy bear like a shield. "Can I sleep with you?" Of course, sweetheart, Emily said, forcing a calm smile as he climbed into bed between her and his little sister, Lily, who was blissfully unaware of the horror surrounding them. She tucked the covers around them and closed her eyes, wishing it would all disappear, but sleep eluded her. In the depths of darkness, she couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching, waiting for the perfect moment to pounce. It was a sensation made heavier by the constant reminder of the dolls on the porch and that cryptic note. Hours dragged on, the house a prison of silence, until faint noises crept through the walls. It started as a faint scratching, like nails on wood. Emily's heart raced. Was it her imagination? The whispers of neighbors swirled in her mind again, warning her not to trust anyone. Light spilled through the slats of the window enough for her to see Jacob's terrified face, eyes wide and shimmering. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. She nodded, heart hammering with each pulsating beat. It didn't sound like the wind or any animal she could name. Suddenly, the scratching stopped. Just like that, silence fell like a heavy blanket. Emily strained to listen, breath caught in her throat. And then she heard it. A soft, taunting giggle resonating from the depths of the house. "Mommy, what was that?" Jacob whispered, his body tensing beside her. "Stay here," she warned, her voice barely above a whisper as she slid out of bed. As Emily slipped toward the living room, the rug felt cold beneath her bare feet. She peered down the dark hallway, heart pounding, praying for some sign, something benign instead of the terrible dread curling in her stomach. The giggle came again, echoing eerily, hiding among the shadows. In the kitchen, she fumbled for the knife block, fingers trembling around the cool handle of a large chef's knife, the only thing that offered a false sense of security. She stepped into the semi-darkness, scanning the empty room. The window was slightly ajar, letting a faint wind gust sweep in, carrying distant whispers. Suddenly, a loud bang shattered the silence, something crashing against the front door. Emily jerked, instinctively raising the knife. "Who's there?" she shouted, voice taut with fear. But the only response was an unsettling stillness. She rushed back to the bedroom, heart in her throat. "Jacob, Lily. Get up." They stirred in confusion. Another bang, firmer this time, rippling through the walls. The door rattled violently as something outside clawed at it. Emily's mind raced, should she call for help? But what if the sheriff was just like the rest of them? As she hurried to the door, the giggle returned, closer this time, shrill and mocking. Emily's resolve morphed into terror. She felt the weight of the community's whispers, the pressure of something darker burying itself deeper into her life. Her hands gripped the doorknob, sweaty and trembling. Whatever was on the other side was no innocent prank. As fear hung palpably in the air, a revelation flared in her mind: maybe the tales about the collector were more than folklore. Maybe he was no longer just a lurking shadow. And then, with a wrenching jolt, the door swung open, and a figure, cloaked in darkness, stood before her, eye sockets empty, grinning widely as though the very essence of fear had manifested into flesh. "Come out and play," it hissed, and the world as she knew it shattered along with her heartbeat, echoing in the void of terrifying unknown. What was it after? And would Emily be strong enough to protect her children, or would she fall victim to the very nightmare she feared? Emily's breath caught in her throat as the figure emerged from the shadows, its grin stretching impossibly wide. "Come out and play." The voice held a chilling sweetness, one that dripped with malice. "Jacob, Lily, get back!" she shouted, pushing her children behind her. The knife's blade glinted in the dim light, but deep down, she felt like it was just a fragile barrier against the darkness that loomed before her. The figure stepped closer, its body seeming to twist, morphing with every movement. Emily's mind raced. Shadows danced around it, evaporating into thin air, but the eyes, or what used to be eyes, held an unnerving emptiness. "What do you want?" Emily demanded, her voice wavering as it reverberated through the stillness of the house. "What do you want from us?" "Play," it hissed again, the sound like nails scraping across glass. It lurched forward, and Emily's instincts kicked in. She brandished the knife, the only thing that felt tangible in that moment. "Don't come any closer." The thing paused, its head tilting to the side as if considering her words. A laugh erupted from it, low, guttural, full of horror that twisted the air around them. Jacob whimpered, clutching Lily to him, her eyes now wide and fearful. "Mommy!" Jacob gasped, pulling on her sleeve. "Please, let us go." Emily couldn't move. She was rooted in place, heart pounding, the overwhelming fear paralyzing. Her gaze locked onto the entity, waiting for it to make the next move. Suddenly, the walls behind it vibrated, as if the house itself was groaning in distress. She could hear whispers again, more distinct this time, strange, disembodied voices calling her name, pulling at her sanity. Shadows flickered just out of her sight, teasing, hiding, waiting, and then, without warning, the laughter strangled into a shriek, piercing the air like broken glass. It lunged at her, the ragged edges of its cloak billowing like dark smoke. Emily had one fleeting thought, to protect her children. In a surge of adrenaline, she swung the knife with all her might. The blade sliced through the space where the figure stood, but it dissipated like mist, reforming just behind her. "Let us play hide and seek," it whispered, now right at her ear. Panic surged through her as Emily spun around, arms outstretched, but there was nothing to grasp. In that moment of confusion, she saw it, the flicker of a shadow darting toward the children, who huddled in the corner of the room, frozen. "No!" she screamed, lunging forward, but it was too late. The entity's fingers, gnarled and cold, reached for Jacob, wrapping around his wrist like a vice. "Mommy!" he cried, eyes wide with terror, but she was too far away to help him. "Play!" it hissed, pulling him all the while, that grotesque smile stretching further. In desperation, she moved towards them, adrenaline pumping hot through her veins. She couldn't let this thing take her children. Emily realized then that if she was to fight, she needed to expose the truth behind the stories, to reveal this darkness for what it truly was. "Get away from him!" she shouted. "You can't have him." The entity hesitated, revealing the flicker of confusion in its abyss-like eye sockets. Seizing the moment, Emily dashed forward with the knife, ready to stab through the darkness, to cut through the terror like a lifeline, but the shadows roared back, expanding, swallowing her whole, and in an instant, the room fell silent. As the air grew thick with dread, a soft voice echoed in the darkness, 1, 2, 3. What chance did she have to save her children? Would they all be lost to the collector? In that moment, she realized, the game had only just begun. Would she uncover the chilling secrets that tied her home to the collectors, or would her family's fears become their worst nightmare? Emily's mind swirled, a cacophony of panic and resolve. She had entered a nightmare, but she refused to let it conquer her. The feeling of being trapped clawed at her, the silence stretching uncomfortably as the counting continued in the darkness. For 5 the voice lingered, echoing like a sinister lullaby, each number a reminder of her dwindling time. She stumbled back, heart racing, eyes darting around the now ominous room. Shadows writhed against the walls, inching closer as if they were drawn to the terror radiating from her. She could feel the cold creeping up her spine, pulsating like a heartbeat growing louder with every count. "Jacob! Lily!" she shouted, desperation flooding her voice. The corners of her eyes caught fleeting movements, glimpses of dark figures that scampered away whenever she turned her head. Then, a sudden chill washed over her, as if something unseen had wrapped its fingers around her throat. The shadows thickened, swirling like smoke, and Emily felt a tug on her mind, urging her to submit to the fear. She gripped the knife tighter, her knuckles white, grounding herself. "I want to let you take them," she cried, inhaling deeply to steel her resolve. 6-7 The voice taunted her from the depths of darkness. The walls seemed to pulse with anticipation, as if the house itself thirsted for the terror unfolding within it. Emily took a step forward, inching toward the corner where her children had once been. If she could find them, she might still stand a chance. If only she could see through the suffocating blackness. 8-9 A sudden flicker of light danced in the distance as Emily stumbled deeper into the murky shadows, desperation spurring her onward. Then, she heard it, a soft whimper, unmistakably Jacob. No, no, no. Jacob. Her voice pierced the silence, nearly swallowing her whole. 10-11 time was running out. The counting was relentless now, echoing like a funeral dirge. She pushed herself harder, tears streaming down her cheeks, fear turning into a roaring fire. But just as she reached the corner, she froze. Before her stood a door, warped and twisted, its surface pulsating like it had a life of its own. She could sense something terrible lying beyond it, the atmosphere thickening with dread. The whimper came again, now joined by a soft, terrified sob. It was Lily. Breathe, Emily, she muttered to herself. You can do this. Ready or not, the voice was now right outside the door, sly and tantalizing. With a sudden burst of courage, she flung the door open, revealing a desolate room filled with shadows that seemed to laugh as they flickered and faded. The air was heavy with an almost tangible darkness, a sickening blend of fear and lingering whispers that taunted her sanity. Mommy, Lily's small voice croaked from the far corner. Emily's heart sank. But then came a sound that froze her in place, the unmistakable creak of something heavy shifting behind her. Before she could turn, a powerful grip seized her arm, twisting her around to face the cheerful monstrosity that loomed behind her. Its smile widened, stretching impossibly as it whispered, "Let us play together." Emily's breath caught once more, and just before panic surged anew, the world around her began to shift. The shadows pulsated, the walls trembled, and the entity's grip tightened, threatening to tear her apart. But there was something glimmering at her feet, a shard of glass, caught in the glow of a distant light. Would she dare? The room felt alive, the dread hanging in the air, and Emily knew this climax was only the beginning of an even darker game. What was about to happen next? 11-12 What awaited Emily as the last echo of the count faded into the darkness? Would she plunge into the unknown to save her children or be consumed by the shadows themselves? Emily's mind raced, the dark figure's grin burning into her memory. It clawed at her sanity, tempting her to hopelessness. Heart pounding, she glanced down at the shard of glass. It glistened like a promise in the suffocating darkness, her only weapon against the twisted creature that held her tightly. "Let go of me!" she shouted, her voice trembling but fierce. "Why would I do that?" The entity's voice dripped with glee, a sound like scraping nails on a chalkboard. "We're just getting started." With a surge of adrenaline, Emily swung her arm. The shard of glass cut through the air toward the creature. A flash of fear crossed its eyes, and with a swift motion, it released her. She fought against the dread, seizing her moment. "Jacob! Lily!" She cried out again, her heart breaking. The shadows pulsed, thick and alive, turning her cries into nothingness. She dashed toward the sound of her children's sobs, the glass still clutched tightly in her hand. "Mommy!" Lily whimpered, her voice a feeble light in the oppressive dark. Emily raced to her, heart aching at the sight of her terrified daughter resting against the wall, her brother's small form trembling beside her. They looked so fragile amidst the looming darkness. The sight reignited Emily's resolve. "Stay close to me." But the very room around them seemed to shudder with displeasure. The walls narrowed as if closing in, the shadows swirling with newfound fury. 17-18 The voice resounded around them, reverberating off the twisted surfaces of the walls, each count a harbinger of doom. "Please, we have to leave this place," Emily urged, gesturing for her kids to follow. She could feel the heat of the entity creeping back, the malevolence washing over her like icy water. Suddenly, the light flickered brighter for a moment. Emily noticed a door at the far end of the room. Hope sparked within her chest. If they could just reach it. "Run!" she commanded, pushing Jacob and Lily forward before her. As they began to move, the dark entity materialized between them and the door, its once cheerful demeanor twisted into a grotesque snarl. "Not so fast. It hissed, eyes glowing a sinister red. Emily swung the glass shard, defiance pumping through her veins. The creature recoiled, but it was still there, shadowy and powerful. "Run! Don't look back!" she screamed, and her children bolted. With every ounce of strength, Emily pushed against the malevolence, ready to face whatever awaited her head-on. 1819. The numbers echoed ominously, desperate and relentless. Each pulse of the entity's presence filled the room with dread, but Emily pressed on. The door loomed closer, yet every step felt like running through molasses. "Faster!" she urged, terror mingling with her motherly instinct. Just as they reached the door, the entity crashed into her, sending the glass flying from her grip. It all seemed lost. She felt paralyzed, the breath knocked out of her from the force of the impact. "Go!" she gasped, forcing herself to regain her footing, but then a blaring shriek erupted from the shadows, primal and deafening, causing the walls to shake. The frightened children hesitated, caught between their mother and the swirling darkness. 2021. The pounding in her chest matched each count. She reached out, fingers stretching toward her kids, desperation spilling over. Would they be swallowed alive by the gathering shadows, or could she somehow pull them back? Emily sprinted forward, but the darkness thickened, gripping her limbs in a phantom embrace. It felt like a waking nightmare, dragging her deeper into its grasp as her voice grew choked. What was the twist? Emily thought with a fleeting glimpse of rebellion. Could the darkness take her, or would she unify with it to shield her children from its grasp? And just as despair began to etch into her heart like a chilling tattoo, the counting stopped. What comes next? The silence stretched out, so thick it felt suffocating. Emily's heart raced, trying to outpace the dread coiling around her. The shadows, once chaotic, now seemed to hold their breath, watching, waiting. "Mommy! What is happening?" Jacob's voice quivered, the innocence of it scraping against Emily's already raw nerves. "Just stay close." She managed to whisper, her command trembling as deep-seated fear clawed at her. She dared a glance at the darkness that had captured her, no longer just an entity. It took shape, stretching and shifting like smoke, swirling as if it were a living thing hungry for warmth and light. Its eyes glowed more profoundly, and in that red inferno, Emily could almost see fragments of her past, moments of laughter, warmth, and, most disturbingly, shadows lurking in the edges. "Why have you come, Emily?" It crooned, a lullaby turned sinister. "You've interrupted my fun." "Fun?" She spat, anger fighting against fear. "You call this fun?" A spine-chilling laugh echoed, wrapping around her. "You know nothing of fun, not yet." The children clung to her side, Jacob looking even more fragile as he squeezed Lily's hand. With every heartbeat, Emily felt the weight of their terror pressing down. The walls felt slick and alive, pulsating, reflecting their panic. Within the moist, cold darkness, memories crept in, uninvited and ugly. "You shouldn't have fought me." The creature hissed again, its tone icy, venom dancing on its words. "You should have let go." Let go of what? Emily's challenge edged on desperation. In the thickening shadows, she searched for meaning. Was it the pain from leaving behind her old life? The guilt of accepting the darkness that crept in uninvited? She stumbled forward, forcing a weak glimmer of defiance. "You know. Embrace your fate. It brings sweet release." The shadows shifted, drawing her children further away. Panic coursed through her veins. "No!" she screamed, lunging forward. In that instant, the darkness pulsed violently, swallowing her words. Another shriek erupted, high-pitched and raw. It was a cacophony of pain and laughter. Arms stretched toward her, shadowy tendrils reaching to snatch her children. Then, an unexpected flicker of light surged through the chaotic gloom. It wasn't much, just a soft, silvery glimmer, but it grew brighter, offering a fleeting sense of hope. "Jacob! Lily!" she shouted again, powering through the shadows that tugged at her like chains. She felt the glass shard that once was her only weapon scrape against her skin, a reminder of the fight burning within her. "Mommy." Lily's voice frayed, thick with tears. "Dare you reach for the light?" The creature taunted. "You may not survive the fall. Hold on. I'm coming." Emily felt a surge of something fierce rise inside her. Maybe it was love, raw and unapologetic. Willing herself toward her children, she reached deep into the pit of her courage. The light flickered again, and for an instant, she felt a pulse at the fraying edges of the darkness. Would she remain imprisoned in this nightmare, or could the spark lead them toward freedom? The shadows screeched, a symphony of rage and despair. But at that moment, Emily became something else. She wasn't just a mother, she was the storm. "Run!" she yelled, the force of her command intertwining with a growing light. And in that moment, she knew a choice loomed ahead, a fork in the road. But would the darkness let them escape, or would they become forever entwined in its chilling embrace? As the light flickered faster, Emily pressed on, the entity's laughter now a backdrop of frenetic chaos. What awaited them on the other side of that glimmer? Would they conquer this dark torment together, or was it all a mirage? Emily surged towards the pulsing light, the shadows wailing in protest, grasping at her ankles, clawing at her skin like frenzied animals. It was now or never. She could feel Jacob and Lily trembling beside her, their tiny hands slipping against her skin, desperate for her to pull them to safety. "Keep running!" she yelled, her voice a thin thread against the growing chaos. She felt the darkness writhe and twist around her, the cold breaths of the entity brushing against her arms. The light flickered rhythmically, illuminating faces of fear and determination, striking sharply against the tormenting pitch of despair. There was something in that glimmer, a promise, a possibility, but could it be trusted? "Mommy, I can't!" Jacob cried, his voice cracking as he stumbled at her side. Her heart seized. She couldn't let them falter. "Stay with me!" she shouted, driving her fear into resolve. She turned back, scanning the shadows, but all she saw were the glaring, baleful eyes of the entity, a sea of darkness grinning back at her with malevolent glee. "You cannot escape," it hissed, a spine-chilling whisper crawling under her skin. The walls around them warped, the air thickening with dread and regret. "You've engraved your fate in my depths. Not today!" Emily shouted, launching herself toward the light. "We're not done yet." As if responding to her fervor, the glimmer brightened, outlining their bodies in warmth, but the shadows shrieked louder, a shrill chorus that resonated in her bones. The light pulled at her, tempting her to dive deeper, to let it envelop them in safety. Emily pressed on, weaving in and out of shadowy tendrils that snapped and clawed, desperate to turn them back into their chilling embrace. Then, in the chaos, she felt the sudden loss of the children's warmth. A deafening silence pressed against her as she wheeled around. The shadows had severed their grip. Where were they? Where had they gone? Jacob. Lily. Panic exploded in her chest, rendering her breath short and sharp. She spun in frantic circles, the light now dimming like a dying star. The shadows surged, filling the empty space where her precious children once stood. "What have you done?" the entity crooned, voice dripping with sickly satisfaction. "Their laughter has turned to silence just like yours once did." Her heart dropped like lead, fear deepening into a dark pit. "No. You won't take them." She brandished the glass shard, thrusting it into the air like a warrior's sword, though it felt so fragile in her shaking hand. "Oh, but I already have, Emily." It chuckled, a cruel sound reverberating through the darkness. "You are lost in my realm now. They are mine to keep." She could see flickers of movements in the gloom, shadows darting away from her, malicious whispers curling around the air like smoke. "Come back! Come back!" she screamed, her voice hoarse. The panic transformed into fury, igniting a flame deep within. "I will find you. I will not let this happen." Suddenly, a soft, warm light bloomed in the distance, sharp against the dark. It stretched out, like a hand reaching for her, drawing Emily's attention. Was it real? Or a deceitful lure from the depths? The entity hissed again, a shudder resonating in the depths of her mind. You are running out of time, Emily. Your children can't wait forever. With a final surge, she plunged toward the light. Would it reveal the truth, or would it merely consume her? Each step felt heavier than the last, but she couldn't stop. But what lay ahead? Was it salvation? Or another trick in the dark? The light flickered again, and she screamed their names, doubt and terror ricocheting within her. I'll find you. But as the shadows twisted tighter around her, she couldn't shake the feeling that the true hurt had yet to be revealed. Emily's heart raced as she closed the distance to the brightening light. Each step pulled her deeper into a vortex of dread, like quicksand dragging her under. The light pulled and coaxed her, while the shadows writhed, whispering sinister promises that made her skin crawl. Don't leave me. She cried again, an echo of her own fear ringing back at her. A couple of feet from the light, a sudden chill gripped her. She faltered, glancing back into the darkness. The eyes, those horrible, soulless eyes, watched her, 1,000 tiny pinpricks of malice hungry for despair. Is this the best you can do, Emily? The entity's voice, now a low growl, slithered into her mind, wrapping around her thoughts like a serpent. You're only running to find yourself more lost. Shut up. I'm not afraid of you. She clutched the shard more tightly, its glass almost slicing her palm, and bolted forward again. The light flickered and brightened, teasing her with warmth and hope. Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet trembled, and the shadows coiled around her legs like animated snakes. Panic surged back. She was losing ground, the light now dimming as she struggled against the weight of the entity's torment. Jacob! Lily! She screamed again, desperation coating her voice. Look at what awaits you in the dark, Emily. The shadows morphed, revealing distorted versions of her children, their faces twisted, mouths stretched in unnatural grins. No. You're not real. She cried, choking on her own horror. With every ounce of strength, she tore her gaze from them, pushing toward that blinding promise of safety again. Yet, as she lunged, the shadows retaliated, pulling her back with a force that felt like icy fingers digging into her flesh. You should embrace the dark, the entity whispered, and the world warped around her, the light now flickering like a dying bulb. You can't run from what you've birthed in your soul. Breath ragged, she stumbled but pressed on, a single thought crashing through her mind: I've come too far. And then, just as swiftly as they had appeared, the visions of her children vanished. The shadows recoiled, confused by her resolve, and for a split second, the light flared brighter. That's it, Emily. Keep moving. But as she reached for it, wild hope ignited within her. The ground beneath her shifted, swallowing her feet, and the warmth of the light turned frigid. Mommy! The heart-wrenching cry pierced through the air, echoing all around her. Emily's chest tightened as she strained to locate Jacob and Lily. Everything seemed to close in, the sound of rustling and snapping shadows merging into a horrifying symphony of her worst fears. I'm here. She yelled, voice trembling. The shadows hissed in response, snatching laughter that turned to sorrow. It felt as if they were feeding on her despair, relishing every painful moment. Determination surged again, and she hurled herself toward the light, each step a testament to her love. But would it protect her children, or would it trap her deeper in this nightmare? Then, just when hope seemed to wane, something flickered in the corner of her vision, a promise, an outline of a doorway shrouded in mist. Was it escape? Or another deception devised by the fiend lurking in the dark? Don't let it fool you, Emily. The entity hissed, rage coloring its words. You're mine. As she took a step toward the doorway, the shadows wove together, forming a wall blocking her path. Emily's breath hitched. Would she break through, or would she lose everything? But whatever choice loomed ahead, she felt their warm breaths in the back of her mind, guiding her to move. She had to know, was hope real, or were the shadows destined to engulf them all? Emily hesitated, the doorway pulsing faintly, yearning for her like a lost promise. Was it truly salvation, or was it yet another trick? The walls of shadow encircled her, twisting and turning, hungry for a taste of her terror. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to flee from this maddening darkness. Yet, Jacob's screams echoed in her mind like a drum, driving her forward. "Mommy!" The cry cut through the air again, sharper this time, infused with a raw urgency that stirred her blood. It was the spark she needed. She stepped toward the doorway, and her pulse quickened. But as she did, the world shrieked. The shadows roared, lips curling into sinister smiles, slithering around her limbs, whispering threats and taunts drenched in anguish. "You can't leave us, Emily. They're here. They need you. You will never escape. No!" She screamed, fighting against their grasp, each tug pulling her into a bottomless pit of despair. With sheer force, she reached out for the doorway, desperation igniting her resolve. The light within flickered fiercely, casting flickers of warmth that clashed with the frigid encroaching shadows. In a surge of adrenaline, she hurled herself forward. The moment she crossed the threshold, a blinding light enveloped her. For an instant, she felt the weight lift, the shadows recoiling and shrieking as if scalded, but instead of the relief she yearned for, she stumbled into an unrecognizable expanse. It was bright yet sterile, an uncanny imitation of daylight stretched across a barren landscape. A thick fog clung to her like a shroud, muffling sounds and distorting shapes. "Jacob! Lily!" she cried, fear eclipsing her heart. Silence answered, the oppressive air saturated with an unsettling stillness. The light seemed to illuminate nothing, exposing only an empty void. Panic clawed at her throat. Were her children truly here, or had she conjured this place through sheer will? "Come play with us, Mommy," a soft voice echoed. It was sweet, innocent. "Jacob?" Emily gasped, spinning around, her heart pumping frantically. In the distance, shadows danced, beckoning her forward with taunting hands. She took a step, then another, her pulse drumming in her ears. The figures grew more distinct, slowly reshaping from the fog. They looked like children playing, weaving in and out of sunbeams, their laughter like wind chimes. Relief washed over her, but it was short-lived. "No. You're not real," she exclaimed, stepping back into the harsh light. The faces were all wrong, too perfect, too distorted. They were her children as silhouettes twisted into grotesque parodies of joy, their eyes vacant, void of life and warmth. "You always leave, Mommy," they chorused, their tones too sweet, too twisted. "You never stay." An icy tendril gripped Emily's heart as the shadows reformed around her. Panic flooded her body, choking her breath. She stumbled backward, searching frantically for the way back to the doorway, but it was gone, swallowed by the thick mist. "Stay with us," the voices whispered seductively, caressing the edges of her sanity. They pulsated with longing, agony wrapped in the illusion of bliss. With a jolt, Emily shook her head, willing herself to wake up. "No. I want to be trapped." But as she tore away from their grasp, the ground shifted beneath her feet, a sinkhole of dread forming, consuming every ounce of light. The laughter morphed into a cacophony of wails, each sound echoing her darkest fears, drowning out her thoughts. Panic crescendoed, a blast of adrenaline coursing through her veins, stealing her will. She had to find them. She had to fight. Emily pushed against the suffocating shadows, clawing at the edges of a reality that threatened to pull her under. And just as her strength waned, a glimmer caught her eye, a slight movement, a figure half hidden in the fog. Was it real? Hope sparked within her. "Jacob! Lily!" she cried, lunging toward the figure, but the shadows shrieked in fury, whipping around her, clawing at her, tearing at her mind. "Where do you think you're going?" the entity snarled, its breath like frost as she neared. The figure broke free from the fog, revealing the pale face of a child not her own. The echo of laughter warped, and Emily's heart dropped. "Mommy, help me." Before she could respond, the darkness surged, and the world spiraled into chaos, dragging her deeper into despair. Would she ever find her children, or would the shadows consume them both in an endless nightmare? Emily's world had become a nightmare of shadows and reflections. She raced through the mist, each pulse of her heart matching the relentless counting that echoed in her thoughts. 22:23. The entity's voice twisted the air, thick with malice. "Enough!" she screamed, her voice breaking the silence. Blinding light shimmered in the distance, just a shimmer, yet it felt more potent than any illusion. She pushed through the murkiness, fighting the tendrils of darkness wrapping around her legs, pulling her down into despair. She could not afford to falter. Jacob and Lily needed her. "Mommy!" The cry pierced through the fog, more distinct, more desperate than before. It ignited a fierce urgency within her, rekindling hope and clarity. "Hold on. I'm coming." She strained toward the sound, each step a battle, her breath coming in sharp gasps. The shadows recoiled, seething at her determination. "You think you can keep running?" they hissed, their whispers gnashing around her like teeth. "You're already ours." The ground beneath her squeezed, each inch feeling heavier, more impossible. But Emily would not succumb. A memory flickered within her, a smile, the laughter of her children. With steely resolve, she barreled forward. "No. They are not yours." 24:25. With a final push, she lunged toward the brightening glow. The moment she stepped into the light, it exploded around her, dispersing the shadows like smoke. She blinked as she adjusted to the blinding radiance, the mist dispersing like a dream. And there, before her, stood Jacob and Lily, their faces illuminated with pure joy. "Mommy!" they shouted, arms outstretched. "Mommy, you found us." In that second, every ounce of fear melted away, replaced by a love so powerful it ignited her spirit. She dashed forward, enveloping them in her arms, holding them tightly as if they were made of glass, fragile, precious. "I was so scared." "Are you okay?" she gasped. "We're okay." Jacob beamed, while Lily clung to her side, her small frame trembling but safe. They were real, they were here. But the shadows lurked at the edges, whispering threats filled with malice. Emily's memories and fears flooded back, swirling in the space between her and the dark entity, which loomed nearby, its visage shifting from question to mockery. "You think you can hide from the darkness?" Emily stood tall, gripping her children's hands tightly. "You don't control us." The entity's laughter twisted the air, a shriek of cruelty. "We'll see about that." Yet with each heartbeat, their resolve strengthened. "We're not afraid." They shouted together, three voices merging into one powerful declaration defying the void. As the darkness swirled around them, Emily felt something shift. The shadows paused. It was a moment of hesitation. "No more games," she breathed, fueled by a flicker of defiance. "You will not take us." The light around them pulsed, surged, and she understood it was a reflection of their unity, binding them against the darkness. A gut-wrenching cry erupted from it, and it lurched forward, shadows spiraling wildly, but the light cascaded fiercely, beating back the malignant force. "Let us go," Emily urged, pulling her children close as they ran, pouring all their hope into breaking free. They dashed, heartbeats thrumming, each step resonating with the power of their love stronger than the darkness that had held them captive. With a final mighty surge, they burst through the remnants of the shadows, emerging back into their living room, gasping against the stark reality. The oppressive weight lifted, replaced by the warm glow of safety. They stood there, panting, the house trembling as if unsure of the visitors who had returned. "Mommy, what happened?" Jacob asked, wide-eyed. "You saved us," Lily chimed in, her voice soft yet filled with awe. Emily knelt down, pulling her children close in a tight embrace. "We did it together. We're safe now." The dolls lay still on the porch, their grotesque faces masked with shadows, inadvertently symbols of what could have taken her family. She knew the nightmares still lurked outside, but they wouldn't succumb. They wouldn't let the darkness take roots in their hearts. "I love you both so much," she whispered, feeling an overwhelming sense of protection swell within her. It was over, for now, but she would do whatever it took to protect her family from the horrors that lurked just beyond the light. The stories would fade into whispers once more, but her family was whole, and for Emily, that was enough. And with that, she vowed never to let fear dictate her reality again. If you felt the tension in Emily's journey, if the darkness made your pulse race, then you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't miss out on exclusive content that dives into even more spine-tingling tales. Smash that like button now to fuel the algorithm and help us reach more stories that captivate and terrify. Flood the comments section with your reactions, theories, and what you think is next, because we love hearing from you. And for the true fans, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who must see this conclusion. Let us spread the fear together.